Some interesting things I saw in the news. I'm a bit late to report on some stuff for you, at least in the last week or even right now in the last couple of days. And then once you put these three things together, by the way, you start to see a pattern that should kind of scare the shit out of a lot of you. And it definitely scares me because I've been watching a bunch of content on the economy as well. And it's kind of eerie how this is all, I guess, lining up into the big reset, I guess. Yeah, the layoffs are absolutely out of control. So we are watching the American economy showing very serious cracks, guys, while our government is essentially, we're shut down right now. Not even essentially. We are shut down over a bunch of partisan bullshit. And simultaneously, we declare war on drug cartels like we're in a fucking Tom Clancy novel or something. So buckle up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and enjoy the ride, because we're going to unpack some of this stuff right now. And I wanted to start with the most important one that people aren't even paying attention, but they probably should be, to be honest. And that's the collapse of Tricolor and Tricolor Holdings specifically. How many people, I'm just curious in the chat, how many people actually know about what's going on with the auto market and Tricolor Holdings? So this is like the rumble of what's going on right now. And I was reading about this after the phone call with the guys, or the Zoom meeting. This is when I just found out about it today. So, and I was doing a bunch of research. And so the collapse of Tricolor Holdings, which on September 10th, essentially, it's a Dallas-based used car dealer and lender. And they just filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And before you tune out thinking like, whatever, bro, this is just another business failure, I'll explain to you why this matters and why it's, I would call it a canary in the coal mine for what's coming down the pipeline. So Tricolor, if you don't know who they are, they specialized in subprime auto loans, like bottom of the barrel stuff, if you could think of that. Lending to people who couldn't get credit anywhere. Basically anywhere at all, mostly Hispanic immigrants using individual taxpayer identification numbers, or ITINs is what you call it for short, instead of social security numbers, right? So these people have no credit history. They don't have a driver's license. Basically, they're the most high-risk borrowers that you could imagine. And they were charging 20 to 29% APR on these loans. Illegals. Another word for this is illegals. You could say that as well. Which 30% is predatory, bro. That's the numbers our homies get in the military when they get their Challenger fresh off that first E1 paycheck. Calm down. Don't get wrecked with your 30% payment. Okay, so these predatory loans, but you could say they're predatory, but technically it's legal still. So this usury shit's got to go. It's out of control. So they had 65 dealerships across Texas, Arizona, and California. And in 2024 alone, they originated over $1 billion in auto loans, which, they then packaged up because we didn't learn from the 0809 economic collapse. So they packaged up all of this shit into asset-backed securities. And then guess what they did with them? They sold them to the banks and investors. And here's where it gets really interesting, because these securities, they were rated AAA by the agencies like Kroll. And these are these agencies have a lot of authority. So when you get rated AAA, right, you're thinking just like months before the collapse in 0809, literally the highest possible rating, right? This is the same rating they give U.S. Treasury bonds, you guys. And now those bonds are trading at 12 cents on the dollar. So think about this for a second. You got AAA rated securities backed by loans to people with no credit history, no documentation, and they're paying some insane rate like 25% interest on used cars that were probably overvalued to begin with. And the banks bought this shit up like it was free money, which should start sounding familiar if you remember 2008. And that was the same shit with the subprime mortgage crisis. This is the same playbook. We're seeing it in the auto industry. They learned nothing. It's just it's just cars instead of houses. Excuse me. Do you see how this crash begins to happen? And the numbers are fucking staggering. We're talking $5 billion in outstanding loans, and they're tied to roughly 100,000 vehicles. And the company just opted for full liquidation instead of reorganization, which means that they're not even trying to restructure. They're just saying, fuck it, we're done. Sell everything, and whatever is left, whatever, it goes to the creditors. And those creditors are some big fucking names. This is what's scary. Fifth Third Bancorp. They disclosed up to $200 million in losses from a single loan to Tricolor. JP Morgan Chase is another one. Barclays, Origin Bancorp, Renaissance Bank, Triumph Financial. I have the list here on my screen on the right. They're all on the hook for hundreds of millions in write-downs. And Washington Trust literally resigned as the trustee because the whole thing was such a fucking mess. They didn't even want to deal with the payment chaos. Jeez Louise. Okay? And the part that really pisses me off about this is, and this is where the fraud comes in. Okay? Because the court filings are showing that Tricolor, listen, I kid you not, they were inflating the vehicle collateral values. So they were saying things like, if you can imagine a car with 50,000 miles on it, they were put that it only had 30,000. And they were double pledging assets. So meaning, if you're not a financial whiz, right, they were using the same car as collateral for multiple loans. And they had irregularities abound in loan documentation that the Justice Department and the SEC are now investigating. So they cooked the absolute shit out of their books. So I'll paint you a picture of what this, or how this works on the ground, because the numbers here don't actually do it justice, and you can't really tell what the story's like. So, okay, imagine you're a dude and your name's Miguel, okay? And you're working 2 jobs as a dishwasher and maybe an Uber driver, and you're pulling down, say, $35,000 a year, and Miguel needs to get a car to get to work, right? Because public transport in Texas, let's say, is basically non-existent in most of the United States. So, you, Miguel, you walk into this Tricolor dealership, and they're not going to ask you for credit. They're not going to do a credit check. They won't ask you for a fucking driver's license. They don't ask for anything except proof that you pay taxes via the ITIN. So then they sell you a 2015 Honda Civic piece of shit with like 80,000 miles on it for 18 G's, which is already overpriced by probably $5,000 in the market. And Miguel, you don't really know what the fuck's the accurate price of the car. Anyways, you're just desperate, bro. You need a car. And you're probably dumb enough to trust the dealer, or you have no choice but to trust this dealer because no one else will give you one. So then they rip you the fuck off, and then they finance the whole thing with 24% APR over like 6 years, which means your monthly payment on that massive piece of shit is going to be like $450, $500 a month. And over the life of the loan, you're going to pay well over $30,000 for a car that was worth maybe $13,000 when you bought it. So Miguel's now going to get deported and he's in debt. Insane. And it gets worse because Tricolor takes the loan, and this is how they fuck everyone over. They bundle it with 999 other loans, and then it creates an asset-backed security. Then they get Kroll to rate it AAA because historically these loans perform well. That's what they say. And the borrowers are highly motivated to pay. It's a car, bro. Got to get to work. Can't afford to not pay my car note. And then they go and they sell this piece of shit security, which is claimed to be a AAA, by the way. And they sell this to JP Morgan, Fifth Third, for something like 95 cents on the dollar. Then they pocket this cash immediately, and the bank owns the risk. This is your subprime mortgage crisis happening with cars. Except the bank doesn't think it's risk because it's rated AAA again. So they lever it up maybe 10 to 1. And now the $1 billion pool of shitty car loans is supporting $10 billion in other investments. And when those loans start defaulting at 10%, which they did, the whole house of cards starts to shake. You understand how this system works? We're creating fucking money out of absolute cesspool of shit assets. This is what happened in the housing market. Nobody went to jail besides a mid-level executive, by the way. So what happens to Miguel? What happens to you? So he's still making his $450 fucking payments, right? Every month, just like fucking clockwork, because you need the fucking car to survive in the United States, of course. But his neighbor and we'll say his neighbor is Jose. Jose isn't fine because Jose got laid off when the local restaurant closed. And his neighbor, Maria, isn't because immigration enforcement ramped up under Trump. And her husband got deported. So she's supporting the family alone, now on one income instead of two. And suddenly 10% of these loans are in default, which becomes 12%, which becomes 15%. Do you see how the dominoes begin to fall here? So Tricolor's watching their whole fucking portfolio implode because they're trying to repossess cars, but the cars aren't worth what they lent against them because they inflated the values. So they're taking essentially $8,000 losses on every repossession. And they're getting called nonstop. The banks are demanding, give me the fucking, I need the collateral right now. And they don't have it because they already pledged some cars twice, if not more than once, to different lenders. And the whole thing collapses in a matter of weeks. They're trying to pay off all these lenders, dude, they can't. Hence the SEC investigation. So on September 1st, it was reported that they halted sales. And by September 5th, they furloughed 2,000 employees, right? And by September 10th, they filed Chapter 7. And by September 15th, those AAA rated bonds are trading at 78 cents on the dollar for the senior branches. And that's 12%, or I should say, 12 cents for the junk shit, which just means if you bought $1 million of this paper, you now have about $120,000 left. Congratulations, you got an 88% loss on your AAA rated security. AAA. Kroll, thank you for rating this AAA and repackaging this bullshit again. This entire, we live in such a scammy ass society. I can't even begin to explain to you how insane this is, that people should be going to jail for this. Okay. So I want to use this to connect to the broader economy and why you should give a shit. Even if you're not interested in the subprime auto lending business because, Tricolor isn't fucking unique. They're just the first domino to fall. Like the entire subprime auto market is, I think, $200 billion, right? That's pretty fucking big. And delinquencies across the sector hit 10% in Q3 of this year right now, which is the highest rate since, you guessed it, if you're thinking, 2008, since the financial collapse. And speaking of the finances of these banks and stuff, Ally Financial, which I've used myself, by the way, it's one of the biggest auto lenders in the country. I've used Ally often. They're very easy to deal with. And they got $100 billion in originations annually. And although they're not directly tied to Tricolor, they are doing the same exact thing. They issued these synthetic securitizations, if you can consider them that. Securitizations, in August of 25, right? They partner with companies like Carvana, which had almost 30% delinquency rates in their 2022 pools, right? And I remember I can't remember which was Q2 or Q3 earnings. It was showing an insane increase in delinquencies, right? So this is why they were cutting these loan volumes by something like 15%. You're hearing Carvana was in trouble, might need to get bailed out, something like that. Okay. And then you have to look at it from a kind of outsider, omnipotent perspective, omniscient, because it's not just the lenders, right? The ripple effects are going to start hitting in other sectors too. So First Brands is a $10 billion auto parts manufacturer, and they filed for bankruptcy on September 28th. And they cited $6 billion in private debt. And you guessed it, why? Not for bad business, but tied to the subprime supply chains, because when people can't afford their car payments, they sure as hell aren't buying new brake pads. You understand? Or air filters or whatever the fuck it is. And when dealers like Tricolor go under, they're not ordering any more inventory from these suppliers. So here's the domino about the whole vertical from top down is crashing. So CarMax, same shit. The stock dropped 21% in a single day when the Tricolor news broke. Think about that. And the used car prices are falling 5 to 10% more than what they've already fallen, because you have 30,000 repossessed vehicles that are about to flood the market. And the dealers are scrambling right now to figure out what happens when 100,000 customers who were making payments to Tricolor, but now don't know who owns their loans or where to send the money. That's insane, right? So the Texas AG is telling borrowers to just keep paying to avoid repossession. But who do you pay? Seriously, the company's in liquidation. There is no customer service. The website is down. The fucking trustee is trying to figure out which bank owns which loan because the documentation is so fucked up from the double pledging that nobody knows who actually has the title to these vehicles. Fraud, bro, punishable by death. This is crazy. And the sickest fucking part of this is the Tricolor CEO spent the last 3 years giving TED Talks about building wealth from the undeserved. Motherfucker, dude. And he calls it financial inclusion. While he was running a fucking fraud scheme that was going to blow up and hurt the exact people he claimed he was helping. They're sick. These people are sick in the fucking head. These people weren't even wealthy buying luxury cars, dude. These were fucking dishwashers and landscapers and housekeepers, and they needed cars to get to work and shit, and got sold absolute garbage at criminal interest rates secured by fraudulent collateral valuations. And this guy will walk away. It's fine, bro. He's getting his 8th yacht, Ted. Don't worry about him. This is what happens when you have a 2-tier economy where the bottom 40% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Wages have been stagnant, you guys, for 20 fucking years. They don't tell you that. Inflation ate up whatever gains people made. And the only way they can access basic necessities like, say, transportation is through predatory lenders charging you 25 fucking percent. Then the financial system takes that desperation, packages up, calls that shit a AAA, and sells it to pension funds. Do you understand? And to the insurance companies who are going to eat the massive losses on top of that. Fucking A. That's insane. The numbers are out of control, dude. I think we had something like 300,000+ auto loans that defaulted, you guys. Just in this quarter alone of this year, 300 fucking thousand. This is insane. Like, does that sound like a healthy market? That's crazy. And they're hitting the disproportionate, low income households. And these people have, what is the low income household? The median, I think, is around $35,000. People in service sector jobs, dude, where unemployment's already at like near 5%. And then you're starting to see the same pattern that led to this 08, 09 crash, this time cars instead of houses. But even the housing problem, okay, so think of it like this. Once the cars come down, we don't even have a strong economy because the housing market is hurting almost to 08, 09 levels as well. The housing market also has, I think, up to 1 million delinquencies in FHA loans that the government has been paying using taxpayer money to not cause a ripple effect in the market. I don't think I'm crazy on this. Can somebody, I'll check this shit myself. Or somebody can check it for me before I lose my train of thought, please. What is the FHA delinquencies right now? That's confirmed? Okay, there you go. So up to 1 million, I believe. But the federal government is currently footing the bill on people that have been in their houses for up to 2 years is what I was hearing. 2 years, you guys, delinquent because of the ripple effect. Now we have a weak car market. Do you see how fucked up? This economy is not good like the Republicans are claiming. You know, Trump saying we got a strong economy. We're creating all the jobs. Okay, China, in the terror. No, you're not. You're not doing anything. We're actually getting fucked big time, which is why he has to roll back on some of the shit he said. And I'll cover this in another video, but our farmers are getting absolutely destroyed. Destroyed. Our soybean farmers haven't gotten a single cent from China this year. They're in such a shitter that he has to, and he's already said, because he doesn't want American farmers to go under in his watch. So he's going to give American farmers, essentially bailing them out, subsidies from the tariff money to help keep them afloat. China hasn't bought a single fucking soybean. So, I mean, it's a shithole for this economy. Think about it. The median American can't afford a $400 emergency, dude. A single expense of $400 without going into debt. You think they can afford a $450 car payment when their rent is up 20% and groceries cost twice what they did just 3 years ago? And gas prices are still elevated. What do you think's going to fucking happen? They default and their car gets repossessed and they lose their job because they can't get to work. And then they go on unemployment or fucking welfare or just disappear into the underground, the shadow economy. And the whole cycle fucking starts to accelerate. This subprime auto lending was supposed to be isolated. This thing that it's just, hey, it's car. Like it's just $200 billion in a $23 trillion economy. No problem, bro. It's only 1% of GDP. Well, how much damage could it really do? Think about this, which is the same exact thing they said about the subprime mortgages in 2006. And we know how that fucking turned out for the economy. So who's gaslighting who here? And the real question is, how many other tricolors are there out in the market right here? Like, how many other leaders are using the same fraudulent practice? Is this industry wide? Are they all inflating collateral values? Are they all double pledging assets? Are they lying to rating agencies? And we won't know until they start falling too. And that's how the '08 subprime crash happened.